mold and how damp it is. And we've been told that the facility this is built in a low spot, this whole area. And so I know Paul has some thoughts on that. We certainly would bring in experts, and they would go through this with a fine-tooth comb, and they would check everything. I know that we were at one of the walkthroughs, and there was a teacher that was here the year that the school district actually had a company come in and dig all the way around the outside. I think they advertise it on TV for your basements, but probably retar, they put down stone to improve the drainage. But still, we would want to make sure, and we would want to take that off the table, the whole issue of dampness, of mold, and that kind of stuff. Now, I know Paul has some ideas about.
Yeah, so the new mechanical systems that we'd be putting in with the air conditioning, with the number of air changes that they do every hour, I think will basically solve any issues that are out here. I've been through the building 4 or 5 times. I really have not seen much. There's a few little mold spots on the ceiling tile from pipes that are leaking, but those are all things that we're going to fix. I mean, we're replacing the ceilings. We're going to replace any piping or any valves that are leaking and any insulation that's gotten wet. So I think once the building is fully renovated and fully occupied and used on a daily basis, I really don't see anything that there is to be worried about. And you're looking at the floors, they're all concrete, they're all terrazzo. We'd be replacing most of the carpet with either VCT or some kind of a solid surface flooring that's not going to absorb moisture. So I really don't see much from walking around here, to be honest, to be concerned about. We would certainly test it just to make sure, but I really haven't seen anything. I mean, like I said, most of it's just leaking heating piping, which are all things we're going to take care of. So.
Yep. And I want to make sure that I throw that out there so that you know that we're aware of it, and it's on the list. It will be checked. We'll bring in experts. We want to make sure that this facility is top-notch. So that's why I put that out there right from the start.
Yep. Okay. So hopefully, this is kind of the last tour here, but hopefully we've been transparent. I mean, that's one big thing that we wanted to be with the community is we have absolutely nothing to hide, and we want as much input from the community as we can get. As I mentioned before, we walked all the buildings. We met with principals, the athletic director, the technology director, the food service director, PTO and PTA groups. We met with the board. We tried to get as much input as we could. We even sent a survey out to get some feedback from the community, from staff and from parents. So we tried to get as much information as we could. We've tried to be as transparent as possible through these walkthroughs and through these community meetings. Next Tuesday obviously is a big day. We're hoping after that to start engaging the community even more. We want to set up some committees. We'd probably have a committee for each building that we'd be renovating. We'd probably also have some district-wide committees for technology, for safety and security, for athletics, for performing arts and fine arts. So we'd still need to get a lot of community support and input on how to finalize the designs for all these buildings. So accountability is the other big thing. Obviously, Plant Moran is the 13th largest accounting firm and corporate services firm in the country. So that's a big one for me, is making sure that every dollar is planned for, every dollar is budgeted for, and spent correctly. All the contracts that we write with CMs and architects would be of the highest level of accountability to make sure that what they say they're going to do is done, and if it's not, that it comes on their pocket, on their dime, and not on the district. So we try to do that as best we can. I think Mark will tell you that we've done a pretty good job for him in the past, and our other clients would tell you the same thing. So really, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and to the other walkthroughs, and if there's any other questions we can answer, we'd be happy to do so.
And if you have a question, we need to get a mic.
Bob?
Just raise your hand. Okay.
Concerning the owner's rep in this case, would you be providing that service?
That's the current plan, I believe, yep.
Yes. Yes. The board would engage Plant Moran as the owner's rep. And the very first thing then is they would begin to look at CMs and architects. Yep.
The only question I have a couple of questions for you, if it's all right.
Yeah, go ahead. I hope I can answer them.
Well, I'm sure you can. I'm convinced about the condition of the buildings and everything. Mm-hmm. But the financing is, I've got a lot of questions on. I know you're going to take one levy that's running out, I guess.
Yes.
And you're going to splice into that sinking fund, which, how long does that have to go yet?
The sinking fund is up at the end of this year.
You mean, we only put that in for 5 years?
Yep.
And all we did was replace the boiler in the high school?
No, they did,
I mean, that was the impetus for it, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Maybe,
More roofing and things. They did the roofing, they did boiler work.
Flooring
They did a lot of
replacements,
different
lighting
things.
replacements.
Right.
Okay.
It was all just Band-Aiding it. It wasn't fixing it in the proper way it should have been.
I'm really disappointed that we never had a sinking fund before. I'm even more disappointed that it's not going to be there after this year. What do we do for a sinking fund for repairs? Because everything you do is going to fail with it. You're going to have from the first year. I mean, you know that.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of stuff that's old. What's going to do the maintenance?
well,
I don't see anything in the estimates for that.
Okay, we have, you're right, that to be able to do this, to get the 70 million, we would roll the sinking fund and the MRE bond that expires into and extend that for 30 years. And then there would be an increase on top of that, right, to get to the 4.02. That's the average cost of the house. If your home's $175, it'd be $15. So in that extension of 30 years, for the first, someone asked me that question, how long would these, I think it came up. The buildings, in theory, we should be good for another 30 plus years. I mean, if you think of a life of a bond, that's number one. Number two, the way the district should be budgeted, and it's not budgeted there right now, and I can tell you that schools across the state of Michigan aren't there, you ought to have at least a repair budget for things.
Sure.
I think ours is $45,000 for a district this large.
A sinking fund of that?
No, just a general repair budget.
Well, same
Yeah.
thing.
That should be
1 to 2% probably.
1 to 2% of the the total budget's 38 million. So that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be addressed slowly, so that in the first 10 years there better not be any major repairs. We'll
sure
still
there
be in
will
the
be.
construction phase, but that's a good question. School districts should be budgeting certainly more than we have now in a repair line item out of general fund dollars. Schools haven't been able to do
okay.
that. Yep, they haven't been able to do that, but that really needs to start happening.
Can they do that now?
We're
Out of the
heading,
general fund?
we're heading that way, yes.
But you also pay the
Keep your
teachers
fingers
out of the
crossed.
general fund.
Yep. That's the whole operating budget. But you got to remember, the district was in deficit, right? We're a deficit district. We're supposed to come out in 3 years. That means we spend more than we take in, which the state does not allow that. As a matter of fact, there's a plan to bring us out of deficit in 3 years.
Sure, I'm aware of that.
Yep. We believe we're going to come out this year because of the closing of the 2 elementaries, all the concessions that the employee groups have taken, plus, I'm not going to say this out loud, and hopefully there's not a media person here, we're hoping to get a little bump in state aid this year because it's an election year. So I think you'll begin to see, plus I've redone the whole budget. I put it in a format that I understand, that I've presented to all of the district's employees. I presented it to the Board of Education. It is very clear. It actually makes sense of public school funding, and we've got 2 board members here that sat through the presentation. So I'm confident the time that I'm here that dollars, certainly more than $45,000, will be projected. If this bond doesn't pass, we're going to do something about busing. I'm putting $500,000 in at a minimum to buy 5 buses. Now that's got to come out of general fund to do that, and we may have to make some adjustments elsewhere, but I'm confident with the new format, okay, and how we're watching the budget, certainly the board doesn't want to go back into deficit, that more than $45,000 needs to be set aside every year for major repairs. We've had 2 water main breaks in just the last 3-4 weeks that have eaten up that $45,000. That's not nearly enough.
So I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, I understand that.
I know you build a new school, you add on, you go and redo everything, but, I don't care what, when you go through the massive amount of work that's going to be done, there's some that you can go back on the contract.
Yeah, with warranties. Yep.
But you're going to have, things are going to wear out, the high school and the junior high, they're still old buildings.
Well,
And there's stuff, I know you're gonna redo a lot of stuff, but.
Yep. Yeah, I understand that. What I wouldn't do, though, is I wouldn't put another sinking fund on in 2 years or 3 years to, because it's going to be a 5-year construction phase right from the start, and then you're probably looking at
Yeah,
warranty.
the bond will cover the next 5 years for sure. After that, the board will have to decide if they can set aside money out of the general fund or what they want to do to fund maintenance going forward.
Actually, a good budget, a good way to budget that is to put that money aside, and then if you don't need it, then it rolls over into your fund equity, and it
You're
makes
gonna have
sense.
enough in the general fund, yeah, but.
Yeah. You don't know.
We didn't.
You're right. Lansing could cut us tomorrow. You're right.
And they might next year, because it's not an election.
Yeah, yeah. We're hoping that they don't cut
Don't
us.
say
but I'll go with even right now. But I understand your concern. I can tell you that after these buildings are redone, the amount of maintenance in, the major items will vastly decrease.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Yep.
But it will,
You'll still have some
before
issues.
30 years are up.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end of 30 years, this will all be old, worn-out
yeah,
stuff.
yep.
I won't be here to worry about it, but
I probably won't be either.
my kids and grandkids.
Yeah, yep. But I understand that concern, and I think with prudent planning, good budgets, you can take care of a lot of those issues.
Hope so.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other
And
questions?
a little help from Lansing.
And a little help from Lansing, yeah.
Well, how do you get help from Lansing? Like, how do you put pressure on them to, I don't want to be on the microphone, to give you money, because they just keep decreasing it, but you keep giving them money?
When I call people, when superintendents call people from Lansing, the reps, we very rarely, they listen to us kind of. When you call, there's a formula in Lansing. For every parent that calls, it's counted like, I think it's 10 or 50, they have some kind of formula, and it's based on the number of constituents in their area. How do we do that? We have parents like you call and say, wait a minute, my children didn't deserve to go to school during a time when you're not funding education properly. Yeah, you're exactly right.
You pay a property tax, a sales tax, a income tax, and what do we get for it?
Yeah.
Like another property tax, because they can't fund our school.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there is a-
they can't,
Well, remember,
decreasing it, but I'm not decreasing what I'm giving them.
right.
I'm paying more.
Yeah, there's 2 separate pots of money. There's general fund, which is based on our foundation allowance, operational. Then there's the bond money. Schools used to be able to vote millage to increase their general fund. Proposal A wiped that out. So you can't do that anymore. The bond money can only go, and it is strict, can only go for this bond project. You probably heard me say that. Tomorrow, Carol Dinsmore from the Michigan Department of Education, the person that approved the bond, is coming to walk the whole facility with me to make sure. This is how stringent. She's going to have a pad and a piece of paper to make sure that everything we said we're going to do is what we're going to do. So as part of the process, but 2 separate pots of money. Lansing likes to play with, if this passes, they can't play with the bond dollars. They can't touch that. They can play up and down with this general fund. Very frustrating, especially when they're hammering dollars into other areas that.
I feel like you get double dip. They take your money, but they don't do what they're supposed to with the school system, so then it's up to us to fix it when we already paid for it.
And when I call and say that, it's a broken record. When you call and say that, it has an impact. And I don't know why.
They need some pressure, because I feel like if we keep fixing our own stuff, they're gonna be like, well, we're just gonna keep fixing our own stuff, but we'll keep taking their money. No roads, no schools,
Yeah.
they need some pressure.
It is sad. I've said that. I was the superintendent in the state. It made the press that came out when they did the $470 cut. Because I've been a superintendent for 10 years, so 10 plus. I'm the superintendent that came out and essentially called them all criminals. I said, what you're doing to our kids is criminal. And of course, I got phone calls the next day from Lansing saying, Mr. Kleinhans, what are you calling us criminal? Well, the point is that you're making decisions about the future of our most precious quantity, which is our kids, and you're killing us. And so, and really, that's what spiraled. Montrose and many other districts would have been in the same boat as Bedford. They would have went into deficit. The only reason why Bedford did and the other ones didn't is because we had more fund equity. We had more money set aside in fund equity So in Montrose, we were able to weather the 470 cut. Here, they couldn't do that. Well, I think we're stabilizing that, getting the budget back to where it should be, appropriately funding, and I even think, as I was talking about class size, we're going to be able to right-size the district in some areas and that's essentially because we have a number of retirements, so you can do that. If you have a top-end teacher go and bring in a newbie, you can kind of do a 2-for-1. It's just the way it works. That we can right-size the district and get us back on track. So, and that's news to the board members. They got to close their ears because they haven't heard that plan yet, but that's out there.
Okay. I know these are some of the questions I have to ask now. Okay, so you buy 20 buses, but you need 50.
Right.
So in 10 years, we're going to need more. How are you going to pay for them?
A school district should buy 1 or 2 buses every year. Should be in the budget.
Okay, so we're in a deficit. So we're just wishfully thinking.
No.
Hopefully thinking
No.
we'll be out of it and we'll have money.
No, I would love to. Maybe that's what we need to do. We need to have a public budget
Yeah, I
thing.
don't understand how any of this works. That's why I
Yep.
have a million questions. Because then that tax thing that says you'll pay 641, is that on the 70 million or is that 70 million like
No.
the interest and like the whole thing combined? Like
That's-
what exactly is it?
That would be your taxes. No, the 6, so
You
you're
know
talking
how
about the
it says
chart.
house value's worth 175, the market
That's
value-
15 additional dollars from what you're paying now.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, but it can't be anymore, and it can't be, I mean, wherever the bonds sell. So, but the reason why, and I know that it's hard for you if you can't see it, but I can tell you that, and I had to do this out of necessity. No, this is a great conversation. I had to do this out of necessity. I had a business manager, and Paul knew him, who actually, he died when he was my business manager, and so I was forced to take over the finance. I was superintendent. I knew nothing. Matter of fact, I hated public school finance didn't know anything about it. So I had to put in the budget for my old district into a format that I understood. Now, the budget there was about, I think it was about 11, 12 million. Here it's 38 million. So I brought that same format here, which allows you to better monitor the budget down to the penny. I mean, board members each they can tell you what accounts we have, how much money, how those accounts were figured. So I wish I could say, trust me, but I'd like to show you what we have done here with the budget. And there ought to be,
That's what the thing is. I
Yeah.
feel like timing is everything. Like if I knew you were out of budget, I'd be skeptical because 10 years ago I thought we'd be out of this crisis in America. I didn't think it last 10 years and are you anywhere near being out of it?
yeah,
You know?
no.
It's
I know.
you
I understand that.
I really like
Yeah. I guess what I can say to your question is, I am setting up the budget, or the budget has been set up so that we can better manage the future. I didn't bring the district out of deficit. That has nothing to do with me. That was the decisions, and they were tough decisions that the board made. Concessions, we have some employees here that took concessions. That's what brought us out of deficit. My piece in all of this is I brought in a system, and it wasn't planned by design, but that will help us better make decisions down the road to help keep the district out of deficit and build into those,
buy our own buses, so
Yep. You should do, yeah, yeah,
But- And to Bob's point,
yeah.
the bond will help replace buses. It'll help replace infrastructure, mechanical systems, electrical systems. Without the bond, all that falls back on the general fund. It's cyclical for sure,
Yep. Yeah. So those, yep. Those are, yep. I appreciate that. Yes.
Kind of off of that, and that was some of my questions. I also don't know where certain money is coming from certain things. But, I also, I don't know how it works for what money comes from where. Part of the Common Core stuff, I've seen through Ohio schools that they're ditching a lot of their books, just plain throwing them out, buying new curriculum, new books, new plans for the whole school. When do we have to do that? Did we already? Will we soon? Where does that money come from? Kind of 2-3-part question here.
That's a good one.
I don't know
Martha's
how to
your
ask
entire
it.
budget
And
online
how
on the
often
website?
does our curriculum turn, to stay up with the ages? And where is that money coming from? And is that part of any of this, or is that coming from our teachers' salaries? And
Okay,
that's kind of my
yep,
concern.
And Tim's kind of been up on the Common Core, probably knows more about it. Tim is a professor and studies these things. But I can just say from a implementation of Common Core, in Michigan, the implementation's been going on for how many years, Tim? Probably 4 to 5 years. Now, one of the benefits of not having any money to buy textbooks is, and I'd say this jokingly, is a lot of Michigan schools have not moved forward with purchasing full rounds of Common Core textbooks that have been changed over. Now, that's good in some respect for those, but it's also bad because the stuff that our teachers are using isn't current. Now, I say that, yet you look at the scores, for example, of S.R.E, one of our buildings, in the state of Michigan, the top to bottom list, it's right there at the top. It's within the top. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable that our kids score that high. And even the other buildings, Douglas and Jackman and the middle school and the high school are certainly up a lot higher in the top to bottom. So with that, now, if we were going to implement Common Core and we wanted to change all of our textbooks in our whole curriculum across the district, we would probably, that would have to come from the general fund, and that would be enormous amounts of money. School districts should be doing, every 4 to 5 years, should be doing a curriculum review and a curriculum update. Now again, just like with purchasing buses, when the 470 cut hit, a lot of that was put on hold. And so we're not there. In our curriculum budget,
we have adopted new curriculum materials for different subject areas and approved different textbooks, kind of on a rotating basis. But it's been more minimal purchases. Thank you. It's been more minimal purchases with regard to that. One of the things about Common Core is not so much really the textbooks, but it's really how we teach. The standards are really pretty much the same as what we've had before. It's just how we should be delivering that and the ways students will be thinking about the particular standard will be a little bit different. So it's really more from the teaching standpoint and how we do.
Well, the whole deal about the Common Core is more depth and breadth, getting kids to think more critically about content. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. And so that is a key component.
The thing about Common Core doesn't prescribe how a teacher will teach. So when you go from one classroom to the next, yes, it will be different. But how students are really interacting with that material and how they're learning and thinking about that material will be largely teaching-based, and we have to change our teaching methodologies to really adapt to the Common Core.
So are we or are we not receiving money based on what we've agreed to about Common Core standards in Michigan?
There is no separate line item for implementation of Common Core.
So we have no money that
It would be just money out of the general fund. And we do set aside dollars. We do set aside dollars for curriculum purchases. They're just not the dollars. If you were, probably 10 years ago, the district had a much larger curriculum budget than what they do now, I'm sure, positive.
Yeah. Like we were just getting ready we adopted last year a new math curriculum, okay? And so there was new materials that were purchased along with that. And so we do look at that on a regular basis, and we're getting ready to adopt some new materials, a new curriculum here at this next meeting. So.
Yep. Good question. Yeah, implementation of Common Core didn't come with a ton of dollars, so that's, school district has just been kind of plugging along. That's a good question. Yes?
So the turf for the football field,
Yes.
I get it, it saves money, but then if you want more people to use it, it's going to wear and tear on it a lot faster. So if we're not out of our. Okay, so after 30 years, you could have bought that thing with the financing and everything a million times. So how will you replace it and 10 years or whatever, because if you want more than just the football field or players to use it, and the whole idea is to attract more people, the wear and tear on it's going to be 3 times more than what it is
Well,
on a
I've
regular
been
football
told,
field. So
this
how
is-
do you pay for that
This
again?
is what I've been told, okay? I've been told that the only thing that will wear turf down is the sunlight. You could have a bazillion games out there.
See,
It's
like
the,
Whitmer, they have it, and theirs is, no, that was their track, never mind.
okay. Tracks will wear down.
Yeah.
I have replaced, a replacement of a track is 30,000. And that should happen every 5 to 6 years. And that should be in the line item that we're talking about for major purchases.
That's just to resurface it. by
That's
the
to
way.
resurface it.
To rip it out and put it back in from the asphalt up is a lot more than that.
And you should do that, because if you don't, then what happens is the rubber comes off,
Yeah.
exposed cement gets cracked, freezing, thawing, gets busted up, then you've got to spend the couple hundred thousand to fix
So
it,
this will
so.
just be resurfaced
Yep,
every,
it should be, there
the
should be
whole
a.
idea is to keep maintaining this stuff, so we're not in this position again, I get it.
So you're
Then you
hitting
worry,
the nail
are
on
we
the head,
gonna be?
right? There's no money in the budget to do maintenance, things fall apart, then you have to do a full-blown replacement. It's a vicious cycle.
Yes, I
Because there's no funding, for schools, or not enough funding for schools, and you get caught in the cycle, and that's just the reality that we live in. Until that changes, that's not gonna change.
Okay, so I was
Gonna
just,
cover that every 5 years?
All we can do is the best we can do.
Pardon me?
Will that be covered? Resurfacing, something small as that?
Nope,
Not with this bond.
nope, 30,000, if we don't have 30,000 set aside in 5 years to replace that track, shame on us. Really, shame on us.
So that track won't get replaced anytime before the next 5 years, is that what you're saying? You're gonna save the money, or did you say that?
No, we are replacing the track as
The
part of
track
the
is in there. And,
But
it-
once
but
we do, the clock starts, and then 5 years
Yeah.
out, there will be some maintenance that needs to be done on it.
because it's in such tough shape, it needs to be the big repair. It needs to be totally redone versus just the resurface. Got it? Because the pavement's been exposed, and it's no one's fault. It's just, I mean, we had to do the same thing in Montrose. We got 2 at a time, and yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that, the cost for maintenance on just the field. So let's cut out the track and let's talk about the turf, right? So Coach Wood did a lot of estimating. He talked to the other districts or other schools in our district and in our conference and outside of our conference, and had done a lot of legwork on who has turf, who doesn't have turf, and he provided us with some information. Bedford we spend about $80,000 a year maintaining the football turf, the grass field that we have now. So when you put turf in there, sure, it's an $800,000 to $1 million expense up front that lasts 15 to 25 years, depending on, well, right now we're never going to get sun, I don't think. So if we get another year with no sun, maybe it's 25 years. But you take that $80,000. Now, it's not free to have turf. You have to do some maintenance on it, not to the tune of $80,000 annually. But you start looking at those dollars that we're spending annually on that grass, that's where you begin to be able to save to replace the turf in 20 years. That's where you begin to save the every 5 years $30,000 to resurface the track. You absolutely, not just Mark though, you don't just put your trust in Mark, you have 7 board members that the community elects every 4 years. There's rotating terms, not all at the same time, but everyone, I don't know exactly how they rotate, but every...
It's 4 and 3 now.
Yeah, 4 and 3. So, I mean, you get an opportunity as a community to vote people in and out of office. If you don't think they're being good stewards, you attend board meetings to ensure that they're being good stewards and that they're hearing your concerns. So that's what you have to put your trust in.
But I would also put out an invitation, if you are interested, to come in and sit down with me. I will bore you to death for 2 hours, but I will go through that budget and show you what I'm talking about, show you about the way that I look at school finance. It's different than the way that everyone else does. When I arrived here, and it's no different than when we converted over, but typically school budgets are just 100 line items. I mean, here there were thousands, 2,000 line items with no rhyme or reason. And it's usually the theory of big numbers. So let's say this year I'm spending, let's say $30 million on a budget. Each teacher's $100,000. We had 10 retire, so I just take, that the 100,000, or what, you do the math, the $1 million off the top, theory of big numbers. That's not going to work like that with the way I budget. I go to the budget, I go to the building, where that teacher is, I delete their name, I put in a new teacher, open, or once we fill the position, put the new salary in, it automatically changes the FICA, the retirement. It's also over to a health insurance. You plug in what health insurance is, it changes the health number. It's that specific. And that's really the way that schools should be budgeting, but they don't. I have to do it because I'm not smart enough to do it any other way, but it really makes sense for people like me and people like you that school finance is not, I mean, there are people that go to college and do all this stuff.
I think people can understand how people are.
Oh, yeah.
Don't trust people with that amount of money. Mm-hmm. And it comes from the top, and it's kind of just scorns people. And
Yeah, and to that point, okay,
now you got to sell me.
the bond dollars, the bond dollars are heavily scrutinized.
Yeah.
Paul has a actual computer program for every purchase, for every dime, and those dollars are audited by the state separately. So to the point where if you have money left over, we have to make a decision about giving those dollars back or getting a project approved. I mean, they're really tight on that. Our general budget is audited by an outside auditing firm. And so even our general budget dollars are audited, and that audit is posted. I mean, you can get a copy of that. Again, I don't know, but we do have, I call them checks and balances. We have a purchase order system. So like if we're going to purchase something that has to have a purchase order, employees can't just go out. Before I arrived, they had purchase cards. I took those all away, so people hated me immediately when I walked in. But everything should be PO, everything should be approved, purchase order, approved by a supervisor. That goes to a company, the employee or whatever, we get the product back, it's shipped back with a receipt, checks made, boom, mailed, and that is on record. So that's all audited as part of the process. Now, each year they go into separate line items. Like one year they'll take Mike's budget for food service, and they'll go through the whole thing. Now, they'll do the main budget areas, but maybe for that year they pick food service, and the next year they might pick Title I. So on the lower parts of the budget, they rotate the smaller budgets, but for the main budget's audited every year. Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have, I know you probably won't have an answer before it's time to vote, but do you have an idea as to when you might know what children will be where, if redistricting will happen, or if just our cube will change up in Samaria area, how that will go? Like when we would be able to plan on what our plan would be?
Yeah, what we would do is upon completion of the projects and when we decide, the decision is made, we're moving, okay? We're moving the kids. Prior to that, we would have a meeting. I would bring in people to look at the whole process, look at where our things are. As I said, there are experts out there that just do busing. There's an app, it's called, I can't think of the name, but I mean, there's people that this is what they do, and we would bring those folks in, and then we would open up to public forum. So I'd invite you in and say, okay, what do you think? You live up here, your kids have been here, do you want them there? We would open that up prior to the moves.
So maybe summer of 2016 would be the earliest?
Yeah, probably. Yep, because it would take, yeah.
And then where would kids be during construction? Obviously, you're not going to fix the whole high school during the summer, right?
We would do that in phases.
So we may decide to do all the renovations at the high school in one summer. The additions will take longer, to renovate the auditorium and put the new stage on and the new lobby on and the athletic entrance. Some of those projects would be more like a year or 15-month projects. But the renovations, depending on how much discomfort we all want to endure for a crazy summer of construction, they could be done in a summer or maybe over two. Those are some of the conversations we have to have with staff, with the athletic director, what kind of summer programs are there. There's always summer school and community ed things that need to use the building. So a lot of times districts don't want all the buildings shut down at once. They want to make sure they've got a building or two to use for some of those programs. So how we phase everything out still has a lot to be discussed.
And the reason why I laugh is I have my hair's going away, so I want to try to keep my hair. So when he said they did both a high school, smaller than our high school, but I'd say maybe half the size. And a middle school in my other district, the teachers packed the last day of school. Matter of fact, we got kids out a day early, so, but close your ear, kids. We're not going to do that. We got to make up time. We let the kids out. Teachers worked that last day. They packed everything up. Paul had a moving company in that next day, moved everything. They gutted everything. I mean, it looked like the facility was, a Mack truck came through and just gutted, I mean, ceiling tiles, everything. The weekend before school was to start, we allowed the teachers back in. They had everything done. So it's amazing when, but we had to do, I mean, there's a lot of planning. There's a lot. That's why someone said, we had some friends come down this weekend. It was my wife's birthday. And I told them I came down here, you know, to balance the budget, great school district, you know, great Board of Education. That's what drew me here. Didn't think I'd be doing a $70 million budget. My friend said, didn't you just do that? Are you crazy or what? Because it's a ton of work. But the benefit for the kids in the community is huge, and it is long-lasting. And as I said, I told them, this isn't about me. We had this meeting last night. It's not about the board members. It's not about Plant Moran doing another job. They're busy enough. This is about the kids in Bedford and what kind of opportunity can we provide them for their future. And so Lansing can mess around with us. They can go up, they can go down, they can cut us. But you know what? We can control some things. And the things that we can control, I believe, and I've always thought this is that's one of the reasons why I got into this business for kids. We can control this for our kids, and we can do some great things. So really, that's where it is. And when this is all done, I won't have any hair left, so that'll be kind of where we're at. So, any other questions? Okay. Some of you have been with us for like 2 months, it seems like. These folks have been to every single one that we've had. So I do thank you. The election is upcoming. It's next Tuesday. I've kind of backed off a little bit, but please know that in my heart, I believe that this is a turning point for this school district and for this community and for what we're doing for our future generations. So I can say, because this is kind of an open meeting, but please consider supporting our kids. Please consider going to the ballot. We had a gentleman that came to us that's worked on bond issues for years and said, if this thing goes down, you're going to, the day afterwards, walk around and talk to people, and they're going to say, oh, well, I thought it was going to pass, so I didn't vote. Leave no stone unturned. If you know there's a yes vote, get that yes vote out there. Please consider supporting our kids. Please consider getting your family involved, and don't take anything for granted. Don't sit back and say, oh, I think it'll pass. We got to have every single vote to get this thing through, to have a positive impact for our kids and for the future. So please consider that.
Does it go back on the ballot in November if it doesn't pass?
Great question. We're not sure. Yep, that decision has not been made yet. Yep. Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone.